Hello guys, welcome to ZBrush hair sculpting tutorial. So I have this character, but she doesn't have any hair, which is weird. So today I'm gonna go over some of the techniques I use to create hair geometry-wise. So we're not doing any fancy fiber mesh or action. It's just ZBrush sculpting. Okay, because that kind of stylized hair is sometimes actually very useful too, like in a lot of games like League of Legends or Overwatch. They're not actually simulating hair, they're creating geometry hairs. So let's see how we can do those things. Okay, let me start by duplicating my model here. Duplicate that up to, and then I can isolate it, and then maybe just mask out where I think the hair will be growing out. Nothing really have to be preset here yet. I just wanted to mask out where I want those things to be, more or less. And then Control W to give it a polygroup, and then Control Shift, click on it to isolate that, and I can just do a data mesh to data mesh that. Okay. Oh, before I do that, I also wanted to go delete hidden to delete those things, and then I can data mesh it. Otherwise, I will have those separated. Alright, so I have a simpler model now to at least start defining where my hair is. I can do a simple inflation just to have it a little bit bigger than my head, and then I can use my move or other brushes to define where things are. Okay. Alright, so let me bring those back a little bit on the top. Okay, and here I want to create some those kind of hairstyle that you have all the hairs post back and have a big bun here, like this, right? And then you also have some hairs in the front dripping down, bigger hair strands. That way I can introduce different ways of creating those hairs. So that's the bun part and the other parts of the hair. Okay. And I need those strips going down, but I'm going to do that later. Okay, for now this is what I'm going to create first. I also wanted that part to be separated. Let me go BSI slash curve, just to Control W to give the group, and then I can slice that part out. Control Shift and click on it, and then go split hidden. So I have two parts now, and I can data mesh those separately. So I have two pieces now. It's just easier to manage things when they are supposed to be overlapping or intersecting in a very distinctive ways. So that way it's easier to manipulating stuff. Okay. So now I can do some fine tuning to refine their shape. All right. So once I'm happy with this, I'm gonna go Control D to subdivide it a few times. Okay, and then I can start refining or defining the bigger clumps of the hair, big clusters of hairs. So I'm gonna do this, use the clay build up, just start drawing my strokes to define the bigger clumps that the hair will have. I'm not really worrying about any bigger details, smaller details, just how I would separate the hairs into multiple big parts. So for example, this is one part I'm drawing out, right? A bigger part like this. And then moving on to the next, just gradually blocking out those bigger parts. And when I'm doing this, I can also turn off symmetry because I know that they are not supposed to be symmetrical, more or less. So it would be better to just break the symmetry right away when you're start doing those. So again, here what I'm trying to do is bigger clumps, so I don't really care smaller details. So that's why my subdivision level is also really low, because really those details, those high resolution model to me is actually really hard to control. So I use lower resolution model just to create the shapes as fast and as clean as possible. Again, you see I don't really care the strokes in the middle, but I'm doing the bigger parts, those three bigger parts. Okay, And one thing I'm trying to avoid is having similar proportions. So that's why I'm tweaking those two. And I want this part to be maybe a little smaller and that part to be bigger, and their proportion could be a golden ratio, things like that. Okay. Alright. And then the top, just keep doing the same thing. And also when I'm doing that, I also wanted to refine the arc or the contour or the silhouette of my hair. Okay. And maybe the edge of the hair also needs to be a little bit more refined. So here I'm trying to also fan out the variations or the size variations of the clumps. So this one is pretty small, and then we have a bigger one here. Just trying to actually control those instead of, you know, let it happen. You make it happen. Okay, you make those variations. You try to avoid similarities because, you know, it's very easy to end up with two similar shapes. Okay, so alright, so that's for the top part. And I'm gonna go for this bomb here. So I'm gonna start drawing out smaller changes here in the middle. So it's gonna be more or less like this kind of, let me smooth that out a little bit, maybe Control D to subdivide it too, right? Something like this going up, and then something from the bottom. It's better to have a reference. It's always better to have some reference instead of you trying to figure out or invent a lot of things here. Although you can, and it's not forbidden to invent, right? You can design the hairstyle yourself too. It's just really hard sometimes to end up with a very good result. It would be better to find something really nice that you know that would work. So yeah. So again, big chunks. So I have one here, another one there. Now I do mind where they intersect or where they overlap. That's where I want to define it as clear as possible, so I don't have to guess later on when I'm doing smaller details. So here I need to define, like, this one should go wrapping the top one. So I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna define it here so I know that's what I want for my future reference. So that goes inwards and that wraps in. Right, so those relationships has to be clear even without any detail. I'm gonna make those really clear to me. Refine the contour. Always good to have move to here to refine it. Maybe position can be a little bit backwards and maybe tilt it this way. And that's why I separated those two things, so I can really refine those with ease. Alright, so that's that part. Now for the front, smaller parts, I'm going to use a different workflow, which is a geometry-based, curve-based geometry. Okay, so how do I do that? Well, I need to have some kind of contour I will do for my hair. So I'm going to go for some sort of geometry. I think I can actually use a cube here and make polymesh 3D. Oh, you know what, before I do that, I may need a smaller amount of segments. So let me go to the initialize down here and then change the divisions to something really low. Okay, and then make polymesh 3D. Now I can use the modular tools, BBZM. Okay, let me go delete that, and that. I cannot see the other side, which is not cool, so I'm gonna turn on double here underneath display properties, which is here. And I'm using my own custom menu to do those things. I don't need those bottom faces either. Oh, come on, don't want to subdivide that. Okay, now what I'm gonna do is start refining the contour. Let me mask the bottom and then reverse the mask, and then I can use scale to make it longer at the bottom. Okay, and then let me add in a edge loop here in the middle, just one edge loop. Alright, and then move that edge loop down, maybe go that way a little bit. So I'm just mask that and reverse the mask so I can tweak that guy, and then maybe I can bevel this using bevel here to give it some nice contour. So what I'm doing here is I'm trying to create a nice contour for my hair, nice section. So one more edge loop maybe here, and one more here just to tighten it up when I smooth preview it. One more here, maybe I can have one more edge loop here, and then mask it and reverse it, and then I can move it to maybe this way. Just want to have a little more detail here, so maybe two more edge loops, and then mask, invert mask, so I can define where that edge is. Okay, and for that guy I think I can maybe just make it closer to, and then that can be a little bit more further away. Right, just defining where they are. Okay, maybe this is too wide, so let me scale it down like that. Alright, so once I'm happy with it, it's gonna be this contour of my hair. So I'm gonna do is making it facing me like this, and then go to brush, and then underneath the create, I'm gonna create a insert mesh, and new. Okay, so that's my new insert mesh brush. I'm gonna go for stroke and then curve, and turn on this curve mode. That way I can drag out a curve that is actually just repeating this contour if I make it bigger. Right. Another thing I need to make happen is I want to weld them together. It's gonna be underneath brush, and then modifiers. We have those weld points and stretch. Make sure those are on so you can have those all connected. And one last thing I also wanted to have is, of course, make it smaller at the end. So underneath stroke, let me put it to the palette here. Underneath the curve functions, curve modifiers, I'm gonna modify the size, and then let me open that curve file up and then flip it vertically. So now when I drag it out, it's gonna be more like this. Okay, now one last step is fine-tuning that. So I maybe I think I know I want that. Maybe I can have this. Alright, so now I have this. Cool. So this is one hair brush. Now we can use it to create hair strands. Maybe I want the end to be all well together. So let me reset it, flip it, and I don't drag that in. Okay, cool. Alright, so after creating this brush, I can go back to my hair. And then I can start drawing out my smaller hair strands. I can select my head and use that brush to create my hair. It's too big, so maybe make it smaller. Alright, because we're working on a very high density model, that's not really fast enough. So I may choose to duplicate my model here and then just create a simpler version of it using the remesher. Oh, it's too dense, so I might need to wait for a little while, but you know, just to make my life easier in the future. You know what, I'm gonna post it here when it's done, then I'm gonna start a new tutorial and then we can start from there. Okay,